to introduce themselves, and then we'll start questions. The questions will be asked to both people, and they will have 2 minutes to respond. And then at the end, they'll each have 2 minutes to do a wrap-up. The candidates have not seen the questions. This is not a debate. This is a forum on issues. So there'll be no banter back and forth between the candidates. We drew for who's going to go first, and Lisa's going to be answering the first question, and then Mayor Troggett has ended up winning, and he's going to be the last one to speak at the wrap-up. So I'll turn it over to Tony.
Ms. Johnson, why are you running?
Is it the first opening?
Why are you running for office, and what are your main qualifications to serve as the Versaille City Mayor?
I'm Lisa Johnson, and I'd like to bring a new vision for Versailles as your next mayor. I was fortunate enough to marry my husband Joe in May of 1990, and together we have raised 2 children here in Woodford County, K through 5 at Northside Elementary. My son was the first 6th grade class at the new middle school, and both of my children graduated with honors, academic and athletic honors from Woodford County High School. Their experience at Woodford County High School prepared them extremely well for their college experience and beyond. Our son went on to get a master's of global economics and is pursuing his career options outside the U.S. And our daughter is studying Arabic at the University of Arizona on an ROTC scholarship, and she will serve our country as an officer in the U.S. Army upon graduation in May of 2020. I received a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, which prepares me well for this job. I have a degree in Human Resource Management and Business Administration from Miami of Ohio. I also have earned a Master's of Public Administration from the award-winning Martin School of Public Policy and Administration at UK. I worked for 23 years in the private sector and have many transferable skills that I would bring to the office of mayor. I managed a $10 million budget. I also helped recruit and train at the district, regional, and corporate level. And I have 8 years of experience in the public sector where I founded and am executive director of a nonprofit after-school tutoring program called Mentors and Meals, which basically our goal is to enhance academic achievement in middle school students through mentoring. I am running for this office because I am an engaged citizen, and I recognize that Versailles is one of the most beautiful small towns in not only our state, but in our nation. And we need to play to our strengths of the agriculture, the bourbon, and the equine industry, and we can do better to make Versailles as beautiful on the inside as it is on the outside. I hope tonight I can earn your vote, and that you will see I'm a person of integrity and will do my best to learn, listen, and lead with integrity and effectiveness. Thank you for this forum. Thank you, Mr. Brock and Mr. Veazey and the community activism class for this opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, why are you running for office, and what are your main qualifications to serve as the Versailles City Mayor?
Right. Thank you. First, let me thank the Chamber of Commerce and Don Veazey and the community activism class for putting on this forum and for streaming it on Facebook here. And I'd like to give some prayers to the people in the Carolinas and Virginia for the massive storm that is upon them now. I am running to continue the good things, I believe the good things that we have done since I've been in office. Woodford County and Versailles has been my home. I was born in Woodford Memorial Hospital. Dr. William Grawl, who's still around, gave birth to me. My paternal grandparents were farmers in Nonsuch, and my maternal grandparents, my grandfather was the longtime Versailles fire chief. My grandmother retired from Texas Instruments. My father worked at Kuhlman from when it opened till when it closed, and my mother recently retired from Kroger, and she's the only one that I mentioned that's still with us. And I'm proud I in fact grew up on Woodford Street is where I grew up. That's how much Versailles is in my blood. I ran for city council in 2012 because I thought there was a generational gap in our city government. I think there was a generational gap in all levels of government, but there was nobody under age 50 sitting around the table when decisions were being made. I've always had an interest in government. I attended University of Kentucky for undergrad and got my economics degree. Then I went and completed 15 hours at the Martin School. I had gotten a job working for House leadership at Legislative Research Commission, and my schedule was such that I transferred the 15 hours to U of L, which sad to say was a lot easier to complete. So I did graduate from both colleges. We do bleed blue in my house. There's no problem there. Like I said, I got a job working for state government, working for the legislature, and I'd always enjoyed government and always enjoyed watching politics, and I knew that public service was something I wanted to do. I never dreamt that I would run for public office because I'm naturally a fairly shy, introverted person, but I decided to put myself out there in 2012 and exceeded my expectations and finished second in the council race. And then the mayor resigned in 2013, and I was fortunate enough to be chosen by the city council to serve. Ran unopposed in 2014, and I'm extremely proud of the work we've done. The work, so it's convenient in politics to take credit because you get the blame anytime something goes wrong, so you sometimes feel like you owe it to yourself to take credit when stuff goes right. But it's been a truly collaborative effort with city council, fiscal court, employees, community groups.
That's time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again to you, Mr. Troggett. Concerning the possibility of a Versailles downtown pavilion, what is your opinion on having this downtown pavilion, and how will the city raise the estimated $1.8 million?
The downtown pavilion was something that sprung out of a strategic planning session that we had engaged Kentucky League of Cities to put on at KCTCS, and that really was the emergence of the community activism class. Mr. Fannin had brought a bunch of his students there, and their ideas really shined through. The pavilion, we went through a design session, if you will, with an architectural firm we had engaged, and the $1.75 million price tag was assigned to that rendering. We had always thought that was A, too expensive, and B, didn't take into consideration the loss of parking downtown, which is a concern. And it's a concern to the citizens, so it's a concern to us as well. That proposal, in essence, got scrapped, and there's been a renewed effort to come up with some alternatives that would perhaps repurpose the police station so you wouldn't take any parking. You would, in essence, make it an open air facility, preserve the facade. The building's not in the best shape, so it's a pretty economical thing to do. We've since had some interest from private dollars that have come in, and that would be my preferred method of doing it. If the government can get away with spending no money and we can get a venue where we can have public space downtown, I think it's a win-win situation. So I believe there's a real possibility that plan will come to fruition. There's still a lot of legwork to do, a lot of analysis of how to do it, and how much it's going to cost, and how that public-private partnership would work. But I think it's a great idea to have a venue downtown. I do think parking has to be taken into consideration, and I think the use of tax money should be minimum to nil optimally. So, thank you.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Johnson, concerning the possibility of a Versailles downtown pavilion, what is your opinion on having a downtown pavilion, and how will the city raise the estimated $1.8 million?
I know there's been a committee that was formed and has met for 2 years called the Pavilion Committee. They only had one public open meeting and kept no minutes. So I think the first thing that would be important about a pavilion is that there is open discussion among the community, so we know what the community wants and what they want it to look like. I have seen several different cities with pavilions. There's a beautiful pavilion downtown, Lexington, called the Fifth Third Pavilion, which is very modern. I've also seen a very simple structure in Bardstown that really looked like a pavilion you might see at Big Spring Park, but it had the ability to have electricity, so there could be music venues there. and it could be a very simple structure. So again, I would think we would need to have open public record meetings and make sure we are keeping a history of those meetings and find something that really suits this area. And I think a simpler structure with the possibility of having nice bathrooms, restroom facilities, as well as not interrupting parking will be very important. And I'd really like to hear what the young people have to say, because our goal is to do more things here in our community for youth. And they're the ones that could give us input on what they want to see and what they'd like to see there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett. Oh no, Ms. Johnson, sorry. Do you support the spending of $23,000 for another study for the pavilion?
I do not support another study. What I would support is reaching out to a lot of the resources we have right here in our community. Midway University or UK have urban planning development classes. In fact, I've reached out to a professor by the name of Chris Birkenthal, and she would be willing to use this as a class project for her graduate students. They could call it Envision Versailles. They would do that for free. So there is no reason to spend more money on a project without using our resources that are available to us.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Troggett, do you support the spending of $23,000 for another study for the pavilion?
I'll cycle back to my previous pavilion answer. I think there are private dollars that are out there that are going to be spent, likely to be spent on this project. So I do not support the city spending $23,000 for a study. If a private firm or a private investor would like to spend it, then more power to them. And I would definitely support someone else spending their money on it.
Thank you. Again, Mr. Troggett, what would you say is the most critical issue facing Versailles right now, and what would you want to do about it?
The most critical issue facing Versailles. I think there are a lot of critical issues facing Versailles. I do think when you think about the importance and severity of issues, the drug issue takes precedence because there's an actual loss of life associated with that. And it's hard to say that something else is more important than that. I do think we're taking steps to address it. I don't think you can ever do enough on an issue like that, because I think when you lose one person a year, that's one person too many. Our police have been fantastic at investigating these dealers that come in and put this poison on our streets. When we have an overdose, the police treat it 100% like a crime scene and try to get to the bottom of it and locate the dealer. And if there is a fatality, they try hard to prosecute that under the new federal laws. And we were the first community to have something prosecuted under that federal law. The other things, I think our police have started carrying Narcan. We started in December of last year. They're often the first to respond to an overdose call. The Narcan's been deployed in 11 instances since December, which is an awful lot. But I think we're making progress. I think there's a lot to do. But like I said, it's hard to think of an issue that's more critical when lives are involved. That makes it a crucial issue.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, what would you say is the most critical issue facing Versailles right now, and what would you want to do about it?
I hope the opioid question comes up later, because I do think that's important. But what I hear most from voters is that they want more opportunities for shopping, and they want more for their young people to do. I think those are our two challenges. And I am a person that likes to look at unmet needs and to find a solution and then make sure those solutions are implemented. I think Versailles has had a problem with the implementation part. We come up with great ideas and have great forums, and I've attended many over the last 30 years, but the implementation is the thing that gets tough. I think the opportunity is to revitalize our downtown Versailles through small business growth and urban planning, because there are people that would love to live in the downtown area, and that would provide two things. It would cause more foot traffic in downtown, and then more businesses would come. It's a double-edged sword. You can either have more foot traffic and to get more businesses, or you need more businesses, which improve the foot traffic. I'd also really like to see us repurpose the strip malls before we keep building new ones, and provide the type of shopping opportunities that people want right here in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Ms. Johnson, what are the obstacles to economic development in Versailles?
That's a good question. And, there are many obstacles to economic development. We had a kind of a big, influx of manufacturing firms that have built here, and you could call that economic development. I believe, unfortunately, though, they're having a really hard time meeting the needs of their employment needs, and they're also offering just $12 to $14 an hour, which is really tough for someone to live on. I think small business growth is really important because for every dollar spent in a small business, 45 cents stays in our community. For every dollar spent in a chain store or a chain establishment, only 17 cents stays in our community. So to develop more small businesses that will keep our money here in our own community is where we need to grow our economic development area.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, what are the obstacles to economic development in Versailles?
Well, I'll touch on a couple things here. One, if we have obstacles, we've had great success in economic development. We've had, I would say, roughly $100 million in manufacturing investment in the city limits in the past couple of years. Midway is doing gangbuster business with their industrial land. We've employed a full-time economic development director. We have an active EDA board that's city, county, and Midway appointees. I have the good fortune of working at City Hall and seeing the budgets that come in and seeing where the revenue sources are. So to minimize the importance of manufacturing or industrial development, they're the reason we can sit here and talk about pavilions and downtown improvements, because that's where the money is generated from in the general fund. I would say if I had to identify one obstacle, I think that we're a pretty litigious county, and I think that's given us a bit of an image in surrounding counties and among investors, potential investors. And I'm not saying you can take on a case-by-case basis whether something's right or wrong, and there's both examples out there. But it's a reputation that doesn't bode well for private money coming in, because it's expensive. It's expensive on a good day to start a business, small business, large business. It's real expensive when you've got to fight in court for 2 or 3 years.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, what is your opinion of the plans put forth by U-Haul for the old Kroger and Kmart shopping center?
Well, I have one of the good things about being mayor is that you're able to impact change. One of the bad things is that everything you say goes on record. So I've been clear on my position on U-Haul. I believe that the use of that building for storage is an inappropriate use. And the law says so, and the Board of Adjustment unanimously said so. I believe, speaking to the need for retail, I agree there's a need for retail, but when you gobble up 90,000 square feet of retail space with indoor storage, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. And speaking to the tax component of it, U-Haul, if they went through with their plans, would be, I believe their projections when they first came to town were the equivalent of 6 full-time employees in a 90,000 square foot area. That would be the lowest probably in the region for tax revenue per square foot of space. I do believe there's probably some wiggle room on the issue, and I hope that people can get together and talk about it and work something out that's beneficial to them. I wish they'd have done their due diligence before they came into town. They purchased the building on Friday. My first conversation with them was on a Monday. Mine and Patty Wilson and Mr. Soper had a conference call with them on that Monday. So they were 48 hours into owning the structure. I think they came in thinking a big corporation and big money could run over a small town and small county, and I think they found otherwise. But there is some good to the proposal. It does take vacant space and puts it to use, but I think if we can exercise a little bit of patience, which is a hard thing to preach upon the masses, to ask them for patience, but I really think we could get a better user. There are better users that have come out of the woodwork now that they think U-Haul is going away. I think for that space.
That's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, what is your opinion of the plans put forth by U-Haul for the old Kroger and Kmart shopping center?
When I first heard about U-Haul and the situation, my first thought was, oh no, the first thing that people are going to see when they drive down the Lexington Road corridor or Lexington Road is orange and white trucks. And unfortunately, the zoning does allow for renting the orange and white trucks and selling boxes. Those are retail uses. So I guess that, U-Haul purchased the whole property. They're going to do what they want to do with it. I think they should have done their homework and worked with the city before they decided to put a storage unit in. But I'm more concerned about those orange and white trucks. And my interest would be to work with U-Haul now at this point, now that they own that land, to find out some productive things we can do with that area, and possibly to help shield the unattractiveness of the trucks with some berm or with some landscaping and tree material that would hide that, so that people can enjoy the things that they like about Versailles. The other thing I'd love to see, and I told this to a voter, he was a millennial and he loved it, is I'd love to see Kmart, or the old Kmart, be used for one of those break room or breakout room or escape room concepts. I think that'd be a great thing for young people to do. It would take somebody talking with U-Haul, and obviously they make the final decision, but giving them some ideas of what they can do with that other retail space would be great.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, on what would you base your decision to support annexing property?
So, the annexation elephant in the room is the annexing of Edgewood. And that is a property, 336 acres, that the city has tried to annex into the urban services boundary. The question was, on what would I agree? I think the important thing is there are already, last I looked, 1,200 acres already inside the urban services boundary. So until those 1,200 acres are utilized to their fullest capacity, I don't think we need to have the discussion about annexing. If we want to speak specifically to the Edgewood annexation, there's been all kinds of things talked about. In fact, it's made the front page of the Woodford Sun today. But just that lawsuit, it's in litigation now. What we'll have to do as a city official or as a future mayor would be to find out, what the litigation tells us, and if it's positive or negative, you have to deal with that situation. So again, utilizing the space we already have, repurposing the shopping centers we already have before we agree to annex more farmland. And since I have some time, I'll just mention that Versailles has the most rich soil in the world. There are only 3 places in the world that have this Maury silt loams type soil. So when we pave it, we're paving paradise to put up a parking lot.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, on what would you base your decision to support annexing property?
Well, there's 2 different types of annexation. There's an annexation of property that already is developed. There are about 6,000 residents inside the urban service boundary that are not citizens of Versailles. When it comes to annexing areas like that, Colony, Hunters Ridge, I could list a dozen subdivisions. My position on that is if they want to come in the city, I would gladly support it. I don't have an interest in engaging in a prolonged battle to annex people if they don't want to be in the city, or if they take it to a vote. I don't want to come to that. My position on annexing, I supported the annexation of Edgewood, and unapologetically so, and I hear reference often to the 1,200, sometimes it's 1,300 acres that's been used a little bit inside the urban services boundary, and oftentimes the word available is thrown out preceding that number of acres. The challenge is, anytime you go to develop a property, you're going to meet opposition by neighboring property owners. Included in that available land is land right across from Rose Ridge and Cedar Ridge on Old Dry Ridge. I wouldn't support developing that land for commercial purposes like the comp plan says, because it just doesn't make sense. Edgewood to me makes sense. It's on a 4-lane highway. You have development on pretty much all 3.5 sides of it, and it is a came from a family that has been instrumental in the farming community in Woodford County. And if we're going to defer to U-Haul and say, you know, they have the property, they're able to do with it what they want, why not give farmers the same deference? I sometimes think, you know, they're smart people, they can make their own decisions. But I unapologetically supported that. I wouldn't willy-nilly support any annexation. I can't envision another annexation I would support that's not already developed.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, if you received a $1 million grant to use for the city in any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
A $1 million grant. This is going to be, you know, there's a lot of exciting things I could throw out, something for the youth. What I would do is the fiscally responsible thing and apply it towards that shiny new police station we're building up the street here, because that is not a cheap project. It is one, I think, that is long overdue, much needed, certainly justifies the cost, but it is something that we're going to have to bond to pay for. So I would take that money. Like I said, if I were advising my campaign, I would be throwing up fingers behind you right now, because this is a horrible answer, but I would use that in a practical purpose towards that police station.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, if you received a $1 million grant to use for the city in any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
That's a great question, because I run a nonprofit, and that would be like my dream is for a $1 million grant to drop in my lap. For a city, we need to think about public health, public safety, and one of the issues that came up was the opioid epidemic. There are no detox or treatment facilities in this county, so anybody needing those services has to go outside the county. And that would be one thing that would be nice to partner with the hospital and find out. Those things are expensive. There's legal liabilities, and there's possibly facilities that need to be purchased and built, and accredited addiction counselors that need to be hired. So that would be something I think that would help both public health and public safety.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, if the City Council votes to support or not support a project, even if you don't agree with the Council, will you support the decision publicly?
As mayor, I don't get a vote unless there is a tie. So, my role as mayor would be to make sure that the council is doing their due diligence, that they're having open meetings and taking minutes and keeping track of the things that are being discussed and the actions that are being taken. And if it comes down to it and there are 4 council members for and 2 against, then yes, I would support the 4 even if I didn't agree. If it came down to a tie, then I would have the ability to vote in that circumstance, and hopefully encourage the other 3 that didn't vote that way on why that was a good choice. But I would support the decisions of the majority.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, if the City Council votes to support or not support a project, even if you don't agree with the Council, will you support the decision publicly?
I would likely not support the decision publicly. I believe, as a student of government, I am a firm believer in the separation of powers. The citizens of Versailles elect 6 city council members, which is the fewest allowed by law. When you have a city council form of government, I would propose cutting that in half if I had my druthers, but state law doesn't allow it. But they're elected and they're accountable to the same 9,200 people that I am. So to me, the 6 people sitting around there casting votes, they're accountable to me only as one of 9,200 people. I respect that division of power. I don't expect them to always agree with me. I'm probably not always going to agree with them. They're entitled to be wrong just like everybody else, So there's only been a couple tiebreakers since I've been mayor, and they were a series of tiebreakers related to a budget vote. Those situations are best avoided if possible, if you can work something out beforehand, just to avoid any bad feelings or situations like that. But no, I would likely, if it's something I'm passionate about, no, I would not agree with it. I would execute it as the sworn duty of the job, but wouldn't necessarily publicly agree with it.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, what is your opinion about merging the 3 local governments into one operation?
In 2014, September of 2014, I proposed, or in August of 2014, I proposed ordinance 2014-38, which takes the first step to create a commission that would study, to use the common lingo, the merger of the governments. That's an ordinance that must be passed by at least 2 legislative bodies in the county. If not, all 3 would have to pass it if they wanted to participate. We filed it with the county clerk. I had some discussions privately with some of the other executives and legislative body members of the other governments. There was little to no interest. I think little interest would be giving it too much favorability. There was little to no interest. The ordinance is passed, it is filed. If the fiscal court were to convene tonight in a show of unity and adopt the same ordinance or give first reading to the ordinance, we would have a commission that's formed. I can't say, and this sounds, I don't like answers that are pandering or wishy-washy, but this is the honest truth. I don't know if I support the merger of Versailles with the county governments. I know where the revenue's generated, and I know how the revenue's distributed, and I know that the 9,200 people in the city are probably going to pay less under most scenarios that a merged government would create. I am in favor of convening the commission and studying the issue, because I think at the very least, if they get together and say it's a horrible idea, then that's fine. It could be a horrible idea, and we don't have to go forward. I bet we can find some more efficiencies. You know, we have the only merged police department outside of Lexington and Louisville in the state. We combine a lot of services, our economic development, our emergency management. I think we could do even better than that, but I can't say that I'm for it or against it.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, what is your opinion about merging the 3 local governments into one operation?
So I support the study of a merger between the City of Versailles and County of Versailles, potentially leaving Midway as its own entity, because if it's not broke, why fix it? According to the Kentucky League of Cities, there are 7 ways to merge a city and county. So one thing I would do is, with my connections at the UK Martin School, and in fact I've already reached out to one of my professors, and they agreed that they would take on this as a strategic management planning course. And what they would do, and I would also offer that to the University of Louisville's MPA program and Moorhead's MPA programs. And it would be a great opportunity for the students to come, and these are graduate level students, to come up with the pros and cons, to come up with a strategic SWOT analysis, which would be strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to doing something like this. And I would ask them to take a position and then invite city, county, public open record, public forums to hear what those presentations are, because that way we would get that conversation started with some really good academics behind it, and then join the public so that we hear about how it would affect us personally. But yes, I do support studying the mergers.
Thank you. Again, Ms. Johnson, how would you handle the loss of a large employer in Versailles?
Are you referring to a specific employer?
You can only ask you the question.
Can you repeat the question?
How would you handle the loss of a large employer in Versailles?
It's hard to answer that question because I don't know if you're talking about a manufacturing employer, an academic, but I mean, it would be devastating to a community of our size to lose one large employer. I guess we've had situations in Versailles that I recall where employers have changed hands. Sylvania comes to mind. So what we hope is that, for example, Kuhlman, when they left, there was a facility, and then the facility that was available became KCTCS. So as mayor, I think it's my role to act as a spokesperson, an ambassador, to go out and find other opportunities should we lose a large employer. I would hope that before we lost that large employer, we would find out if there was a concern that the city could help with. And right now, again, I see the concern in workforce development, not having the people to fill the positions that are currently available. So again, as mayor, finding out what the problem is in advance and being proactive about that would be so much more, I guess it would be a better situation to be proactive versus reactive.
Thank you. Mr. Trugget, how would you handle the loss of a large employer in Versailles?
First, since he started whining back there and he's left the room, I do want to acknowledge my little man Liam is here tonight. He did not like my answer on the merged government question, so I heard him start fussing and leave the room in protest, but I don't know how he'll like the answer to this question. He's poking his head around the door now. One of the things that I'm most proud of as mayor, and the headlines in the Woodford Sun are not always indicative of the job of mayor and what goes on at City Hall. In my tenure, we have put almost $2 million into the rainy day fund. So we can operate city government. If all of our sources of tax revenue shut down, we would make it almost half of the year without missing a beat. That's the first thing you do to weather a storm, an economic storm like that. And the loss of a large employer, which is always possible, and you always have to anticipate something like that happening, it would be, the biggest problem would be to the morale of the community. Hopelessness is something that spreads extremely quickly, not just here, but everywhere, and despair could easily take over. I think we've done a good job diversifying our economy. The reason More Than a Bakery was a big success, they're not tied to the automotive industry, so if there's some cyclical problem there, they're still good to go. KCTCS is another thing that was my predecessor's claim, but that is a wonderful thing for the diversification of our economy. I think diversifying the economy is one thing you have to do, building up your rainy day fund and being ready to go in hard times. It's easy, and what we're doing now, you fix the roof when it's not raining, and it's not raining, and we're doing some things that were overdue, some projects, some programs, but we're mindful of the fact that some of this could go away at some point.
Thank you. Mr. Trugget, there's a lot of talk about the need for affordable housing. What specifically does affordable housing mean to you, cost-wise, and what would you suggest as a way to provide this affordable housing?
One of the big challenges of affordable housing is exactly in part of your question as to what affordable housing means. There is affordable housing in the way of subsidized housing, whether it be multifamily or Section 8, single-family rentals, things of that nature. I think the biggest problem we have in this community is affordable housing as it relates to people who are trying to move up from starter homes to something kind of in the middle. I think our inventory is low there. I think if left to their own decisions, home builders are not going to build houses to that price point because their profitability is, if you build a $400,000 home, your profit margin is 10%. You don't want to build a $180,000 home. There's a big difference in what they're putting in their pocket. I have created, and we've only convened once due, and it falls on me because I made myself chairman of the task force, but I did create an affordable housing task force and put a diverse group of people from diverse backgrounds that have varying levels of knowledge of different parts of affordable housing, whether it be government subsidized or whether it be something more in the $150,000 to $200,000 range. I'll say $120,000 to $200,000 range. I'm not sure what the answer is. I think that the need is evident, and I'm hoping that some people working together and sharing some ideas, I hope that at some point something clicks and we're able to do something, and we're able to do something without spending a ton of money to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, there's a lot of talk about the need for affordable housing. What specifically does affordable housing mean to you, cost-wise, and what would you suggest as a way to provide affordable housing?
So, to answer your first question, what is affordable housing? I'm thinking we're talking about an 1,800 square foot home in a price range of about $100,000 to $125,000. Affordable also to me doesn't mean unattractive. And I think when people talk about affordable housing, they think about Section 8 housing. I think we need to be aware that millennials and older adults that are looking to adults are looking to downsize. Millennials don't even want to own a 4,000 square foot home on a quarter-acre lot anymore. So I think the solution to this is to allow the Planning Commission to have more flexibility in working with the zoning codes that are inside the urban services boundary. And by that I mean they need to allow for more density. So right now the density is 4 houses per acre. If we did a higher density of 6 to 8 homes per acre, which allows for multi-use homes, or potentially a fourplex, or maybe even a really nice small rental property, or an apartment complex along the lines of the nicer ones, that this would still give people a chance to either have a home that they don't own, or own their own home, but not on that large 4,000 square foot house on a quarter-acre lot. It's a blessing and a curse in Woodford County. The blessing is that a lot of people want to live here. The curse is that land is expensive. So improving the density in certain areas inside the urban services boundary, let me be clear on that, would be my solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, if you had a conflict of interest on an issue, how would you handle this in a city council meeting?
I'm trying to think of what conflict of interest you would be referring to, so this question's a little vague. If I look at my situation, I run a nonprofit, and as mayor, I would not be able to be the executive director of that nonprofit anymore. So my goal would be to step down and to be a chairman of the board and still have some opportunity for governance of the nonprofit. But that would also mean, and it would have to be very clear, that there would be nothing in my office as mayor that would overlap with that nonprofit. And so that would be an area that I would definitely look at and be very aware of. Of course, a nonprofit is also, it's doing really good things for the community. So as mayor, you want to do really good things for the community and help education. So anyway, again, I'd like to be involved, but again, the conflict of interest I would take that very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, if you had a conflict of interest on an issue, how would you handle this in a city council meeting?
I'm like Lisa. I'm trying to envision a situation where that would come up. I'm unfortunate enough, I really have no financial interest, so I can't imagine a conflict of interest popping up. But we have laws in place. We've rewritten our ethics ordinance. In fact, it became a certified city of ethics that has a mechanism in place for how you handle conflicts of interest, whether you're a council member or a mayor. Certainly the mayor, it's hard to get around any issue because anything that staff does is technically under your direction as well. So would do everything I could to avoid a conflict, and avoiding the appearance of a conflict is oftentimes more important than so yeah, I would do whatever the ordinance requires. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, do you or do you not support the proposed Edgewood Farm Development Project, and explain why or why not?
I do support it, and to be clear, I don't think it's a perfect project. And unfortunately, I think the way that our laws are set up, they really do not invite compromise into the system. The way planning and zoning is, it's a judicial function when there's a zone change, and the same with the city council. So you can't get the parties together prior to a decision being made to compromise, because that's an ex parte communication. You could have those discussions in open meetings, but I've dealt with a lot of people who were bringing money to the table. They're not going to have those discussions in a lengthy public meeting. I think that what sold me on the project, there were two components of it. The residential part, there was a residential part that, you can take it or leave it. We need some housing, but I think those needs are being met elsewhere. There's a commercial part to it, which could be good. It could also, I don't know if the demand is there for the acreage that's part of that, but there's a professional office space that's there, and that's just 30 acres of the project. But that, to me, was a big deal, and that's what, when the project first came to fruition, that's where the hospital was wanting to come in and build, and that's something that's tough to be against. And the 118 acres of industrial land is on a rail adjacent to an existing, to more than a bakery, that stuff to be against. Midway has land to bring in. They're bringing in all these factory jobs. They're cutting their property taxes. They're cutting everything they can because they're swimming in general fund revenue. And we're sitting with 118 acres of industrial land pending before a circuit judge right now. If we had that land in these hot times, it'd be amazing what we could do.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, do you or do you not support the proposed Edgewood Farm Development Project, and explain why or why not?
I do not agree with the annexation. I am in favor of using the 70 acres that are already inside the urban services boundary, which could be rezoned. For example, for the hospital that I've heard needs 26 acres should they decide to build. They could rezone that from retail to P1 and have plenty of room for the hospital facility. I think, again, the 336 acres is excessive. And it is my overall opinion that Versailles needs to repurpose our existing old shopping centers before we build new ones. It would also be a goal of mine as mayor to ask our planning commission to reach out to property owners and see what they're what their plans are for development. Are those 1,200 acres available or not? I've heard mixed messages from our EDA. But I think we should find out what those 1,200 acres, how many we have before agreeing to absorb more acreage into them. From housing standpoint, there are already 400 homes slated for the Backer 1 and 2 properties and another 125 homes slated for the development off US 60 next to Southside Elementary. So we have plenty of housing. So I would not be in favor of the annexation.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, what are your thoughts on a homeless shelter in Versailles? And if in favor, should the city financially support a shelter?
So I've had an opportunity to, I actually went to a homeless shelter with Sherry Williams, who's involved with Unity Outreach, which is a group that is very involved with looking for opportunities for a homeless shelter here. I will say there's the one in Jessamine County is doing well, and there's one in Winchester that has gotten some very good results. It's a big undertaking, and I would absolutely support those who are working on that goal, and would do what I could as a citizen to help. From a city standpoint, I would have to look at the budget and see what area of a city budget would allow that and would be able to support it. So I'm a little bit unfamiliar with that. The fact that we haven't done it ever concerns me. I'm wondering if there's just, there's nothing in any budget that could help. But I do know it is a concern. I do know that Versailles has homeless here, and that we need to do our very best to be offering them safe housing and good health care.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, what are your thoughts on a homeless shelter in Versailles, and if in favor, should the city financially support a shelter?
The homeless shelter, that's one of those divisive issues that comes up, and I've given a lot of thought to it and had a lot of conversation about it. I can't say that there's too many lack of details about what's involved. Location is one thing. You heard me reference earlier that developing a piece of land, the one thing they all have in common is that you're going to have people opposing it right next door to it. Well, try propping a homeless shelter down next door to a business or a residence and see what kind of response you get there. That needs to be, location is crucial on something like that. You need to have not only community buy-in as a whole, but you need to have buy-in from the people who live in the proximity to where it would be located. I think there's a lot of things I would love to see. The devil's in the details. I would want to know how weapons would be managed. I would want to know how the possession of controlled substances would be handled. Is it going to be men and women? Are children welcome? There's a lot of issues that I think affect law enforcement, which is the mayor's responsibility ultimately. They would need to be answered before I could sign off. As far as city involvement, there's a case to be made that the city should be involved in the provision of the service. As a compassionate human being, it hurts my heart to think about people sleeping and not having a home to go into. We can't do everything as a city, so I don't know. I wouldn't want to justify spending an exorbitant amount of money if the impact is going to be minimal. But it's something that needs to be discussed further, and hopefully I'm quite certain the Affordable Housing Task Force, considering the makeup of the members, it will be a topic of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, how important are parks and recreation activities, and how do you propose to improve them?
Parks and rec activities are absolutely crucial to maintaining a quality of life in a community. We have been blessed with not only a great facility, a structure in Falling Springs, but we really have good outdoor parks facilities as well, and we have the Woodford Youth Soccer Association, which is world class and invites people in from all over the country for events. Parks and Rec is, as I said, it's very important. It is a function of government, and we do spend a lot of money, the city and county both, towards that goal. I think we need to improve Big Spring Park. I think that's something that we pretty much have consensus on. I don't think there's anybody who would disagree on that topic. One thing we've started doing, we'll be paying off our bond for Falling Springs in the next budget cycle. The city and county jointly funded the construction of that project. As we're paying that off, I've started putting money in the budget that's called the Falling Springs Escrow, because we know there's going to be capital. You know, we just had a big water leak out there last week. There's going to be capital improvements that need to be made. There's going to be things that need to be repaired. And when those come up, you don't have the luxury of time. You can't scrape together money. You can't go to the bank and ask for a loan. So we're escrowing money to be prepared for that in anticipation of that bond payment falling off. And once the bond payment falls off, we'll increase our contribution to that. Parks and Rec, Rich Picker does a fantastic job running that facility and running the affiliated programs. There's a little something for everybody, indoors and outdoors, and we need to continue to support that and let them do their job, and city and county support them where we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, how important are parks and recreation activities, and how do you propose to improve them?
I think parks and rec activities are crucial to a small town, or a large town, actually, any town. I am very much in favor of revitalizing Big Spring Park. As a member of the Downtown Planning Advisory Committee, that is one whole subcommittee that's chaired by Councilwoman Dake and Krista Stout. And they're really working on ways. They did an extensive study and talked with over, I think, 11 different individuals on coming up with a plan, and identified an organization that could provide a beautiful plan. And she was unable to even have it looked at or considered to put a plan in place. So, you know, there has to be good planning before you just jump into a project, but absolutely we need to revitalize Big Spring Park. And then I think Falling Springs is absolutely a treasure in our community. And in addition to the pool and the indoor pool, the outdoor pool, all the activities there. I'm a big fan of their spinning classes, and again, I think just making sure that people know that Parks and Rec is there, and how to access them. And one other area would be transportation. How do we get some of our kids that can't drive yet, how can we get them out to some of our parks, especially Falling Springs? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, is the Versailles Police Department adequately staffed?
You know, I had a great opportunity to participate in the Citizens Police Academy. It was run by Mike Murray, who is now the Chief of Police. And it appears that, I mean, I was very impressed with our police department. I think their staffing is good. I think they are aware that they need to plan for succession as some of their policemen retire. And they have a plan in place for that. Very excited about the new facility. Absolutely is an important part of our community, and I was understood why we needed a new police department after spending 8 different sessions in the current building. So from all I heard, they felt that the interlocal agreement is working, and it seemed like it was well staffed, and I applaud Chief Murray for his efforts.
Thank you. Mr. Trugget, is the Versailles Police Department adequately staffed?
I would not want to say that we're adequately staffed. We're close. Ms. Johnson's correct. They're operating fine, and Chief Murray is a superb leader. He follows a chief, Jimmy Fugate, who was a fantastic chief, a man of few words, but a man who really could get things done. And he was preceded by Chief Johnny Wilhoit, who is currently the sheriff, and that's who was chief when I became mayor. I had the honor of working with him. There is a challenge nationwide on finding people who want to be peace officers. As you can imagine, there's been a lot of negative connotation with police officers around the country. Much of it deserved in the specific instances, but as a whole, and by as a whole, 99% and 100% of our men and women are honorable people who do the job for the right reason and do not abuse power in any way, shape, or form. But it's not something that young people watch the news and aspire to be like when I was a young man. You know, that was a job growing up. If I were more courageous, I probably would be a police officer now. But I turned to what I'm doing instead. I'm proud that the work we've done in the police department is another thing I'm very proud of. She mentioned the CPA class. We're now offering that twice a year to engage more citizens in police activities. We now have 100% of our patrol officers have body-worn cameras. We were one of the first small towns to start down that road, and we finally have completed 100% of them. We now have an app on the phone where people can anonymously report crime tips, and I have tried it myself and anonymously reported something and saw how it came through, and it truly is anonymous, so I would encourage anyone to do that if they can. I'm real happy with the police leadership. Chief Murray, Assistant Chief Rob Young, our detectives are top-notch. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trugget, is there a scenario where you would support a city restaurant sales tax to support tourism efforts?
That's a good question and a tough question. I owe you for picking me first on that question, by the way. Yeah. I would say that's an issue I'm very familiar with as a Kentucky League of Cities board member and from my work in Frankfurt. It's an issue that has been around a long time. Certain cities have the power today to do that. The problem under the statute, if we were to enact a restaurant tax, 100% of that money goes to the Tourism Commission. Now there's something, to me, that's problematic about a group of Versailles elected officials voting to implement a tax, which is never a fun thing to do, where the proceeds would then go to another appointed entity to spend. I have a problem with the way that's set up, but that's inside baseball there. The short answer is no, I would not, under any scenario that I can envision, support a restaurant tax. I think it would be nice to have that revenue. I've seen the projections. KLC did the projections on every city in the state on what that would mean to us. The new hotel is going to quadruple our tourism budget in the first year out of the gate. That's pretty significant. If we need more tourism dollars, then I think they ought to come to City Council and Fiscal Court and Midway City Council and ask for and demand more tourism dollars. But I don't think a restaurant tax is the way to go. So I would not, and if the council voted against it 4-2, I would publicly oppose it to cycle back. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, is there a scenario where you would support a city restaurant sales tax to support tourism efforts?
I had the opportunity to go with the DPAC, Downtown Planning Advisory Committee, to Bardstown. And if you talk about a city that's got their act together, Bardstown is one. And their EDA individual, Kim Houston, talked about this city tax. It's the first time I had ever heard about it. And her recommendation was, if you have an opportunity to do it, yes, you should do it, and you should do it at the maximum amount. Now, I'm not saying that that would be my position, but I am saying that for a town like Bardstown, it was a game changer, and she used that word. What I'm saying is, it's great that we do have a hotel now, because the tourism had $0 coming in, and that will be something versus nothing. There are a lot of things a city can do with additional money, but nobody likes the idea of a tax. Certainly my friends that are restaurant owners would not like to hear me say that I would support a tax. And I really think we need to see what the hospital does and how that affects our town. But I can say that a city pretty much like Versailles, with some of the same industries like bourbon, they were able to really capitalize on the dollars that tax brought in. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, why should you be elected instead of your opponent?
I was hoping we could save that for a debate, which we hope to schedule sometime in October. I'll say this. I have maturity and wisdom that I've gained from not just politics. I am not a politician, and most of my opponent's time has been spent in Frankfurt and in politics. I think people and the voters I'm talking to, they want somebody who's real, who's a citizen, who's lived this, and also has business experience that I bring from the private and public sector, to be able to reach out for these public-private partnerships that are extremely important. Having been in those industries, I know where to go. I know people to talk to, and I will be a good spokesperson. You know, it also takes sometimes somebody outside of the realm of politics to identify the problems and to create a better efficiency. I am a very open and transparent person. I have been on boards, I have been a facilitator, I have always taken minutes, I have always required people to, in my organizations, to have record. It concerns me a lot that at the top level there has not been oversight for open and honest, transparent government. So I believe that my business background, my public sector background, my non-political background would actually be a benefit in the role of mayor. And I would welcome that. I would welcome the opportunity to be a public servant, more so than being a politician. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Troggett, why should you be elected instead of your opponent?
I do want to compliment Lisa, because that was not as bad of an answer as I was anticipating. So thank you. It didn't sting that badly. I was waiting on that. I think, I mean, clearly when you put yourself out there for office, you believe yourself to be the better of the two. So I would expect she thinks she's the best of the two options, and I'm sure she's not surprised that I disagree with that. I do think she makes some good points about politicians. I don't think people want politicians, and I think to imply that, and I have a history in politics and I have a history in government, and it's a long history, and it's a lot of results driven, and I've worked for good people and I've worked for bad people, to be honest. I've seen the good and bad in the legislature, those who are effective, those who aren't, those who are honest and those who aren't. And I think how to act and how to get things done. I do think my roots in the community make me more attuned to what I think people need in Versailles and Woodford County. I think that my experience at City Hall, which I would not classify as a liability at all. I think this is not a job you can come in on day one and just pick up and start doing. It is a complex job. You're managing anywhere from $15 to $18 million per year. You've got 105 employees that you're supervising. I think the experience, the roots here, and I think, you know, I am nothing if not genuine. All you really have to do is get on Facebook on a random Friday night when people tag me. You know, I never dodge the issues. I never dodge a question. You know, the first rule of leadership is that you take the blame for everything, and I try to do a good job of that. Or I try to when I can, but I think, you know, I would need 2 hours to answer this, I'm afraid, so I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for the last question, we're going to go back to Ms. Johnson to start. You have 2 minutes to summarize your position on the future of Versailles and what needs to be accomplished.
This isn't the final 2 minutes. Oh, this is the final. Okay. Wow. That went so quickly. As we wind down this portion of the forum, I'll share with you something that I learned from two of the most influential people in my life. From my mother, who is Italian and a great cook, I learned that when people are hungry, you feed them. When somebody loses a loved one, you take food to them. In fact, in an Italian kitchen, whenever 2 or more people are gathered, there is food being cooked and consumed. So I'm passionate about recognizing the needs of others. From my father, who is over 80 years of age and still takes and teaches classes at Carnegie Mellon University, I have learned that education is a great equalizer. That is why I went back to get my Master's of Public Administration after I had been out of the classroom for 30 years. That is why I started the Mentors and Meals after-school tutoring program for youth. And that is why I'm running for this office. What I have learned in almost 3 decades here in Versailles is that it is a beautiful place to live and to work, and with a little more work and good governance, it can be as beautiful on the inside as it is on the outside. Yes, it is worth protecting the assets we love so much: our agriculture, the bourbon industry, the horses, and we need to grow in a smart and sustainable way. We need to become a 21st century community, and that means making positive changes with all voices at the table. We need to take these next steps with care and consideration for each other, and with actual facts and open, transparent meetings where minutes are taken and made available upon request. You have heard who I am tonight. If you want to know more, please go to my website or my Facebook page.
That's time, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I would be honored to serve as your public servant.
Now, Mr. Troggett, you have 2 minutes to summarize your position on the future of Versailles and what needs to be accomplished.
I do want to clarify on the meeting minutes. I chair the Versailles City Council, I chair the Affordable Housing Task Force, and I chair the Kentucky League of Cities Economic Development Task Force. All 3 have minutes. So the entities that I'm in charge of keep proper minutes. I think I could run through a list, and I did make a list of all the things that we've accomplished under my leadership, and certainly not all of them are due to me. Some of them really have nothing to do with me. But I think I've created an environment where results matter, and where we don't just show up and collect a check, either at the council level or at the mayor level, or at the staff level for that matter. I think there's high expectations. I could rattle on. Our general fund revenue is up 17%, even though we've cut the franchise fee on gas and electric. We've cut the motor vehicle property tax by a quarter. We've removed the excess fee on trash collection, and general fund is still going through the roof. Our downtown is fantastic. Public spaces are beautiful. The flowers are great. We have a mural that's going to be unveiled. You can see it every time you drive by, but it's going to be unveiled next Saturday. We have a lot of downtown investment. We have a lot of investment in the manufacturing sector. People are working, and the fact that there's a shortage of people to fill these jobs, that drives up wages. The big winner there are the employees. It's a supply and demand relationship. Our public safety is been improved dramatically. We have a new hotel where there was a coming soon 2010 sign when I became mayor in 2013. There is now the largest Kroger in the state, and a viable shopping center. Where there was a dilapidated structure, there is now a Holiday Inn Express that is doing well. Thank you.
That is time. Thank both of you.
Thank you both for being here, and thank the audience for this. We'll have a short break so we can set up for our council. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Tony.
I coached soccer at one point. I'm sorry.
If we could have everybody please come back in the auditorium and the candidates come up front. I think all of you know that we are live streaming this. The last time, even though it looks like there's only a few people here, the last time we did it, shortly thereafter, we had 600 hits on our website. So thanks to Carolyn, who is our audio-visual computer specialist and executive assistant to me, we've got all this stuff coming live to you. We had 12 individuals running for city council. It's hard that we don't have everybody here, and I have to apologize for that. Mary Ellen Bradley did not respond to either my letters or my emails. Kyle Brannon responded to me this morning, said he's unable to attend. Larry Britton emailed me and said he is out of town. Ken Kirkhoff emailed me and said he's out of town. I had not heard from Tim Middleton, and as just before I came here, Fred Siegelman said that he was unable to attend. So we have the 6 candidates here. We did draw from who's going to go first and who's going to go last. Tristan is the first one to speak, and then Mike Cohn will be the last one to speak at the end. And we'll rotate answering the questions as we go along. Do you need me to go over the rules? Sure, okay. You get 3 minutes to introduce yourself and with your first question. And then after that, there's 2 minutes. Everybody answers the same question. You have 2 minutes to answer the question. And then at the end, you'll have 2 minutes to summarize your platform. Any questions on that? And we will not answer any questions from the gallery here. Olivia and myself will not answer any questions, so the questions are as stated. Any questions from us right now, before we start? Okay.
Mr. Farrell, why are you running for office, and what are your main qualifications to serve as a city councilman?
Well, I'd like to start by thanking Dawn and the community activism class for hosting us, and I'm sure everybody feels the same way. The community activism class is near and dear to my heart, so I appreciate you guys being here. I'm running for city council because I have lived here my entire life, and my family has been here for over 70 years. I've grown to love the community, and I know that my family has too. They've given, so much to my family that I figured that it was time that I tried to give back any way I can. 2017 graduate from Woodford County High School. I am a current student at the University of Kentucky studying Community and Leadership Development in the Agriculture College. I am the co-founder and co-executive director of Spark Community Cafe, which is a new nonprofit restaurant opening up in downtown Versailles later on this year, which is a product of the community activism class itself. I served on both the Mayor's Youth Council for a short period of time, along with the Downtown Planning and Zoning Committee for a short time. So, you know, in closing, I'm excited to be running, and thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, why are you running for office and what are your main qualifications to serve as city councilman?
Well, first of all, I don't know that I have any qualifications. I haven't done this before in my life, so there's no qualification. But I'm running because I love this town. It's a beautiful little town. I want to be a part of some of the decisions that are made for this town. I want to be a voice downtown for the people that would want somebody down there for them, and that's one of my hopes. I've been associated with another small town, but not to any degree, and I've learned some things through that small town. And living in Versailles, I see some things that need to be addressed and some things that bother me, and I've had firsthand to be a part of that and those decisions being made. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, why are you running for office and what are your main qualifications to serve as city councilman?
Thank you, Olivia. Again, Patrick Hall. I want to also thank Mr. Veazey and the Chamber of Commerce, of course, the students that are here with the student activism class. It's these kind of forums that bring communication to the populace, let them know what's going on, which I will get to is one of the big problems in our community. But you know, I have one of the unique positions in this panel of not being a native Versaillian, but I did marry one. So I bring that unique perspective. You know, when I came to this community, I absolutely fell in love with it. I fell in love with the beautiful bluegrass area, the food, of course, the bourbon. But you know, there is so much potential in this community. You know, it's kind of like a barrel of bourbon in a way. You know, it's strong, it's full of different and diverse flavors, but it's currently just going untapped. And so what we need to do is we need to tap that barrel. We need to let other people know how wonderful this community is. And the way we're going to do that is by investing in tourism. My background is, I worked for the city of New Orleans, Louisiana for many years. And I served on both the economic development staff of the mayor and also on the emergency planning staff of the mayor. And I was there during Hurricane Katrina. I helped develop the plan that they currently use for evacuations. I also helped develop the plan that they used to recover from that tragedy. And you know, we had some problems here recently with some nasty weather, and there were some issues with communication, people finding out what was happening. And it's those kind of things that I want to work on. And, you know, working on economic development in the city of New Orleans, there is no better tourism place in the world. And I think, you know, utilizing the information that I learned in that position, I find that I'll be able to use those skills and diversify our tourism base. You know, I also think we need more parks and an improved focus on the parks we have. You know, we just had the mayor's debate and they talked about the Falling Springs and Big Spring Park, but they forget the other parks that we have, Russellville, Stonegate, you know, Merewood, these smaller pocket parks that also need attention as well. That's going to bring families to this community. We are a graying community. We need to reverse that trend to bring in some young families to help grow our community. And, you know, that's why I'm running for city council.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, why are you running for office and what are your main qualifications to serve as city councilman?
Good question. I would like to have a voice in the city. I've been here since '93. I'm not originally from here. I've only been here 25 years, so for a lot of standards, we're newcomers. But this is a great little town. We love it. We moved here. We just fell in love with it. I've had several businesses here. We started a restaurant and brewery here last year. I think that I can help from a business perspective in a voice for Versailles. And I think the experience from the business standpoint will help, and I hope I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Dake, why are you running for office and what are your main qualifications to serve as City Councilwoman?
First, thank you to the Chamber and the Community Activism class for hosting this event. Again, my name is Laura Dake. I have lived in this beautiful town for 26 years, and I am currently in my first term as a City Council member. I am running for a second term because, quite simply, I don't feel like I'm done yet. I remain more committed to this community than ever, and I have the drive and energy to continue to work on projects I've started, and am excited to explore projects that I don't even know about yet. As a council member, I have worked hard, done my homework, asked questions, and voted my conscience. I've listened carefully to constituents and have done my best to inform the community about our meetings via social media. I was proud to support city workers last year, as well as the new police station and the ladder truck for the fire department. As chair of the Downtown Planning Advisory Committee, I have worked with 14 committee members and more than 40 community members to improve Big Spring Park, install rain gardens on Lexington Road, and work on wayfinding signage downtown, among many other projects. As chair of the Streets and Stormwater Committee, I oversaw this installation of sidewalks at Elm and Kentucky Avenue and the right turn only at the Kroger gas pumps, among other projects. As a communications committee member, I am proud that we are revamping the city's website. So much started and so much to finish. A little about me. After spending 11 years running a nonprofit transportation program for seniors, I took a position 6 months ago with Bluegrass Care Navigators, which was previously Hospice of the Bluegrass, where I work in business development and marketing. I have advanced degrees from the University of Michigan and George Mason University. I am married to Bill, a family physician with the nonprofit Health First Bluegrass. We have 3 children who graduated from Woodford County schools. 2 daughters are in college, and our son will graduate from boot camp at Fort Jackson in South Carolina in 2 weeks. They canceled another group's graduation today due to the storm, so prayers to my son, to our future soldiers, and everyone in harm's way along the coast. I am a longtime member of Versailles Presbyterian Church, a member of the Lions Club, a volunteer community educator with the Alzheimer's Association, a board member on the Council of Neighborhood Associations Woodford County, and a tutor for an elementary school-aged child who is an English language learner. I would be grateful and humbled to earn your confidence for a second term. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, why are you running for office and what are your main qualifications to serve as City Councilman?
Well, like others have said, I want to thank Don Beasy, the Woodford Chamber of Commerce, our high school Spark group, and others who made this event possible. My name is Mike Coleman. I currently serve on the Versailles City Council, and I'm seeking re-election again this year. In addition to the City Council, I serve as the Vice Chairman of the Woodford County Economic Development Authority. I'm on the Board of Directors of the Woodford County Historical Society, the County Fair, and the Bluegrass Area Development District. I lead our 4th of July festivities, our Christmas parade, and Christmas tree lighting festivities. I live in Rose Ridge subdivision with my wife Michelle and our 2 Yorkies who don't realize that they're dogs. I consider it an honor to serve the city of Versailles and have no ulterior motives or hidden agenda. I love the city, I love Woodford County and our citizens, and I want to continue my service to our great community. I've devoted myself to service to the city, and if you don't believe me, you can just ask my wife, Michelle. She frequently comments when she asks me to do something, you tell me that I have to wait, but you'll drop everything for something for the city of Versailles, and I do hear that frequently. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration and accounting and computer science. I've worked at the Donaldson Company in Nicholasville for the past 15 years as a human resources operations manager. Previously, I was in the U.S. Air Force. I was in secure communications, and I spent 6 years working with in White House communications with President Reagan and President Bush. I left Washington and became part of the U.S. Congressional Base Realignment Closure Committee. The purpose was to close some facilities and to realign others. So I was responsible for closing the Lexington Army Depot and relocating it to Richmond, Texas, and Pennsylvania. I've served on the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Chamber of Commerce, the Mayor's Committee for Commercial Development Retention, the Woodford County Tourism, the Pavilion Committee, and the Bluegrass Ad Economic Development Committee. 4 years ago, we didn't have good jobs in Versailles as I walked the streets. 4 years later, we have more than a bakery. We have American Hoya, Kentucky, and we also have Lakeshore Learning. For people who are going to come here to work, they need a place to live. We need affordable housing. So, as a member of the City of Versailles Affordable Housing Task Force, we're exploring opportunities. Like many other communities in this state and the U.S., we have a drug problem. We've taken many steps in the past 2 years to address the issue. We've worked with the Raw Group. We've worked to provide Narcan for our police officers. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, concerning the possibility of a Versailles downtown pavilion, what is your opinion on having a downtown pavilion, and how will the city raise the estimated $1.8 million? And do you support the spending of $23,000 for another study for the pavilion?
I haven't had a chance to put that much thought into that, but just immediately thinking about it, I would not support it, okay? First of all, the cost. And second of all, it's, I don't know exactly what the pavilion would be for, who would have the use of it, you know, whether it be the younger people, the older people, would it be for everyone? And so no, at this time I wouldn't have an ideal, other than just to think that I would not support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, concerning the possibility of a Versailles downtown pavilion, what is your opinion on having a downtown pavilion, and how will the city raise the estimated $1.8 million? And do you support the spending of $23,000 for another study for the pavilion?
I'll answer your questions in order. The first one is yes, I do support a pavilion. I think it would be a jewel of our community if done correctly. You can look at any number of small communities within our state that have similar type facilities. Frankfurt has one right downtown by their river. There's, of course, the Fifth Third Pavilion in Lexington, in Cheapside Park. There's one in Danville. They serve as central meeting areas for the community. They are a great place for things like our farmers market, which has kind of like been a gypsy and bouncing around all over our community, a different place every year. They need a true home. And I think that that's what that can provide. It offers a place for live music where we don't have to shut down city streets in order to have an event. So I am wholeheartedly for it. How you pay for it? The same way Lexington did, and that's with public-private partnerships. You can do naming rights to it. You can do smaller type fundraising efforts like selling bricks for the walkway up, you know, to memorialize people. And as far as the study, no, we don't need another study. A study's been done. It's very clear what we need and how to achieve it. We just have to have the will to do it and stop bickering over it.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, concerning the possibility of a Versailles downtown pavilion, what is your opinion on having a downtown pavilion, and how will the city raise the estimated $1.8 million? And do you support the spending of $23,000 for another study?
I do support the pavilion. I'm a little concerned about where it's going to be and what it's going to do for parking. Two of the locations that I've seen them look at, we're going to lose parking, and parking downtown is not very good right now. So I do have some concerns about that. I think it would be good for the community. It's been good, as Mr. Hall said, in Frankfurt, Lexington, Danville, they all have them, and it is a good meeting place lot of positive aspects. But the parking does concern me depending on where we put it. I do agree that I think we need private businesses to help in the financing of it, and I also do not think we need another study. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dake, concerning the possibility of a Versailles downtown pavilion, what is your opinion on having a downtown pavilion, and how will the city raise the estimated $1.8 million, and do you support the spending of another $23,000 for an additional study?
Thank you. Well, contrary to what was in the paper the last month or so regarding a vote that was vacated due to improper procedures with voting for this study that has been alluded to, which I brought to the attention of the mayor and the city attorney, I am actually in favor of a pavilion. I would love to see the police station rehabbed. It is in pretty bad shape inside, and if someone can find a way to keep the facade for the most part and turn it into a really great space for the farmers market, for arts and crafts festivals, for music, that would be wonderful. The mayor alluded to some private money that might be in the works, coming potentially. I think that I would certainly support that. The $1.8 million that has been referenced was actually from the 2014 feasibility study, and that was basically taking the entire Rose Hill parking lot and turning it into a plaza and kitchen and a restroom and a stage and all that kind of stuff. So I think the cost for a pavilion only would be less than that. As far as it's actually $24,500 for that study. It was not exactly a feasibility study, but it's more of I think a geological kind of study and a grant opportunities. I would be in support of that if the private investors wanted to pay for it.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, concerning the possibility of a Versailles downtown pavilion, what is your opinion on having a downtown pavilion, and how will the city raise the estimated $1.8 million, and do you support the spending of $23,000 for an additional study?
Well, I was fortunate enough to manage and lead the first pavilion committee. And the reason for that was based on a strategic plan for Versailles that was conducted by the Kentucky League of Cities, and they talked about a barn-like pavilion structure to host downtown events, to become a downtown generator. And I talked to many communities that had different event venues downtown, and that's how they revitalized their downtown. So, of course, I support a pavilion. However, 4 years later, we've now changed. We've got the Amsted Coffee Bar, we've got the Bourbon Bar, we've got the Gallery. So we've got a lot of different event structures in place to bring people downtown. However, it would be good to have a venue where you could have bands and outdoor concerts, and but like the mayor and Ms. Dake had mentioned, I would support public-private partnerships in order to do that. I don't think the city needs to spend another $23,000 on another study. And the reason we did the first study was because we thought that the Rose Hill parking lot was would be the location for the pavilion, and the reason for that was because the city owned the property. Every other place that we looked at, if it was for sale, the price tag went up, so it was just something that we couldn't afford. But we didn't realize the loss of parking, and I think that's critical here.
Thank you. Mr. Farrell, concerning the possibility of a Versailles downtown pavilion, what is your opinion on having a downtown pavilion, and how will the city raise the estimated $1.8 million, and do you support the spending of $23,000 for an additional study?
I think that the idea of a pavilion is great, especially in our downtown, but I think that the proposed place that it has been drawn up for, I don't agree with that. I would like to see it relocated to the Big Springs Park area with a further revitalization of the entire area there. Finding a way to revitalize the Big Springs Park to bring it into downtown to make it more walkable would be a more feasible idea, I think, and a lot cheaper. I would like to see a public-private kind of partnership to get that funded instead of using taxpayer dollars for that. And no, I do not support another study yet again for something like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, if elected, what would be your first priority to make Versailles a better place in which to live and work?
My first priority as a city council person would be to lead the charge to hire a communications director. Now, whether this position is funded by the city through the Tourism Commission or is shared in some other fashion by the 3 governmental bodies here in the county, that could be debated and determined later. But we need a central person to be responsible for bringing information to this community, maintaining a community calendar of events, providing information on city council meetings, tourism-related events. We are a big enough community that we should have a centralized person pushing our message out there. It would also help if there was a marketing person as well, somebody who could sell this community. We've developed the uniquely Woodford brand. It's a great idea, it's just not utilized enough. And frankly, there's also nothing for Versailles. Midway has its Meet Me in Midway. In fact, that's their website name. Ours is, I believe, versailles.ky.org. I mean, there's nothing selling about that. We need someone who is purposely devoted to communicating the message of our city and marketing our city, and that's the first thing I would do.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, if elected, what would be your first priority to make Versailles a better place to live and work?
I would really like to see the retail places that are empty, something done to try to fill those and get some retail spaces here. I really do believe that a lot of the infill that they say is available, I'd like to see some of the studies, or at least what I've seen, they're not totally available. And I really do believe in the old Lou Holtz saying that if you're not growing, you're dying. I think we need to have controlled growth here, not like some of the surrounding counties, but controlled growth, and just to revitalize downtown and try to fill our infill and growth there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dake, if elected, what would be your first priority to make Versailles a better place to live and work?
Thank you. Well, as chair of the Downtown Planning Advisory Committee, I would hope to continue some of the initiatives that we have started. We have 4 subcommittees: Big Spring Park, Lexington Road improvements, downtown business, and signage and street art. So we're working on some various projects, and maybe in 2019, before some of them come to fruition, we are working on some wayfinding signage for downtown that we hope will be around or be done at the end of this year. Big Spring Park is very close to my heart. I've done a lot of work on it. I feel like we're nibbling around the edges with it, and we do need a plan for that space. We do have a wonderful architecture firm that is giving us a bid of $14,000 to do an entire plan for all those acres. And I know that it's a place for community. It's a place that young people can come, young children can come, older people can come, and adults. And if there was programming in place and improvements, and people felt safe going down there, and it was a little cleaner and more trimmed looking, I think it could be a really great space for the community, and just a really great connection between what's happening downtown and then spill over into the park. I think that's a real opportunity, and I'd really like to continue that when I start my second term, I hope.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, if elected, what would be your first priority to make Versailles a better place to live and work?
Well, first would be just to continue what we've started. We've made a lot of improvements in the last 2 years, and I'd like to continue those. One would be in workforce development. As I said before, we've got jobs now, but we don't have people to fill those jobs. So we need to work with our employers and continue initiatives that the EDA has started, such as Industry Day, and we need to work with our GED programs. We have a Bridge the Gap committee that we are trying to explore different opportunities for people who have some barriers to employment. I'd love to continue that. As I said before, we've got a drug problem here, like many communities. But 2 years ago, I learned about an angel program, which was started in Massachusetts. And so we just, so I hounded the mayor, and we now have a full-time community relations officer that's going to lead that angel program to help get people into rehab programs if they want to voluntarily come to the police department. And third and foremost is affordable housing. If we have jobs, we want our employees to be able to come here and live close to where they work. In order to do that, they have to have housing. Not everybody's going to be able to afford a $300,000 house.
Thank you. Mr. Farrell, if elected, what would be your first priority to make Versailles a better place to live and work?
I think that if we as a council want to know how to make this community better, we have to be transparent with the members in the community. This community isn't built by us, it's facilitated by us. So our mission should be to talk to everybody in the community to see what they think is beneficial, and then talk about it amongst ourselves to see what's the most feasible plan. During our city council meetings and an archive of those, citizens will be able to stay up to date on what's going on, and they'll be able to see the issues that we're talking about. And they'll be more interactive in those conversations. Right now, during the live stream, people are commenting and having conversations themselves. Imagine if we could do that every week or every other week when we're having our meetings, about the conversations that will get started, immediate feedback that we will get on if we're doing our jobs right or not. So I think that there are a lot of issues on how to make Versailles a better place to live and work, but I would put transparency at the top of the list. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, if elected, what would be your first priority to make Versailles a better place to live and work?
Well, I keep hearing about affordable housing, and we have way too much what I call affordable housing. That's a broad brush we're painting with. The affordable housing we have now is not maintained. It's, to put it very simple, it's ugly, and it's areas where the drug problem that we deal with is most of it is from those areas. And I think the affordable housing that's rental properties owned by individuals, those people need their feet held to the fire and clean up those areas and make them better places to live. We already have affordable housing. I don't know if we have enough, but we have affordable housing, and it's not very well maintained. And that would be one of my hopes once I have a seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, the poverty level in Woodford County in 2016 was 14.4%, and in Versailles, 25.2%, or 2,250 individuals. What would be your solution to reduce the poverty level?
I would like to see more of them apply for jobs. I don't know. We have a. I ask for people to apply for jobs all the time at our restaurant, and there are jobs available around here. And for our poverty level to be where it's at, I'm not sure what the solution is to that. I don't know if people don't want, or I don't know why they're not applying. I don't know why they're not working. We have food pantry. We have. I work with community dinner and Mentors and Meals and providing food for people. There is poverty here. I do know that. I know it is serious in some areas. But I really do question why so many of the businesses here in town are trying to hire people and no one's applying. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Dake, the poverty level in Woodford County in 2016 was 14.4%, and in Versailles, 25.2%, or 2,250 individuals. What would be your solution to reduce the poverty level?
Unfortunately, I think a lot of the 2,250 people that you reference are children, and don't know the exact number, but I'm guessing quite a few of them. And I'm not sure what to do about the children, except that There are churches in this town that support backpack programs, make sure kids aren't hungry going home from school. There are lots of nonprofits that feed and help children with education. I think education is key, and, you know, to work with kids and get them interested in a career while they're in high school, whether they go to college or whether they go to a trade school, and to get those skills that they need to hopefully not be in poverty like maybe their parents were. As far as the adults go, those people with drug problems, I know have a hard time finding work because the employers want somebody who can pass a drug test. I've been doing a lot of reading about this issue, and one of the things that's compelling to me are the use of, I guess they're calling them maintenance medications. So it would be like Suboxone or Methadone for people who you know, have intractable addiction issues, where they can lead a functional life and not have cravings. They're not getting high, but they are taking a medication. They're being treated for their illness. And in that way, maybe we could work to have those people enter the workforce. And even though they can't technically pass the drug test they will show up as with Suboxone or Methadone, that would be okay because they are in treatment for their disease. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, the poverty level in Woodford County in 2016 was 14.4% and in Versailles 25.2%, or 2,250 individuals. What would be your solution to reduce the poverty level?
Well, we have 30% of our high school graduates don't go to college. Last time I looked, we had 1,600 individuals that live in Woodford County that don't have a GED. So I think promoting our adult education program, trying to provide GED opportunities for them. I mean, it's free, they can do it. The EDA has worked with one of the local employers to offer kind of an internship where a number of individuals could go to work and take their GED classes right there on campus. So I think getting a GED would be helpful to help people get jobs that would reduce the poverty level. Also, expungement seminars. We've held 2 expungement seminars here, trying to, for those who have, you know, they've improved their lifestyle, but because of felonies they cannot get a job, then this gives them an opportunity to have their record erased and for them to qualify for jobs in our local employment opportunities. And I just think bridging the gap, looking to see what factors prevent people who are at that poverty level from being able to obtain a job that would make them have a better quality of life.
Thank you. Mr. Farrell, the poverty level in Woodford County in 2016 was 14.4% and in Versailles 25.2%, or 2,250 individuals. What would be your solution to reduce the poverty level?
I'd like to echo what Mr. Jones said earlier about there being jobs available. Nobody is applying for them, though. I would like to see more involvement with employers, going out and talking to people and trying to get them employed at their establishments. If there are jobs available, I would like to see just more interaction with that, and, you know, some one-on-one and talking to them if they have a criminal background or they have an addiction, working with them on those things. I know that one thing that we've been talking about with Spark Community Cafe, a new nonprofit restaurant that will be opening later on this year in Versailles, is having training programs, having a culinary training program in there to give people a certification to go and further, you know, get a job elsewhere where we are. So I think that being unique in your in employing people and how you train them and how you get them in your doors as an employee is important.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, the poverty level in Woodford County in 2016 was 14.4% and in Versailles 25.2%, or 2,250 individuals. What would be your solution to reduce the poverty level?
I'm not sure there would be a solution. There's enough problems with employment in any town. Kroger, across Kentucky retains 2 individuals for each 100 they hire. Can you imagine that? Retain 2 people for every 100 you hire. Now there's something wrong there. What's wrong there? People don't want to work for $7.50 an hour. They can't take $7.50 home and have anything. So then that's what creates the poverty, okay? I mean, even people who want to work, they can't make the money. Can't. I mean, could anyone make $7.50? Same way at McDonald's. You can't drive past McDonald's. It says we're hiring every day. We're hiring. And they'll hire somebody, and those people are gone. And those are local people. Those are not people that are driving in here to go to work. There's things like that going on. If you can't get a decent wage, then you have no desire to work. Have no desire to work, and that's what creates poverty. So, what is the solution?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hall, the poverty level in Woodford County in 2016 was 14.4% and in Versailles 25.2%, or 2,250 individuals. What would be your solution to reduce the poverty level?
I really appreciate this question because it's very near and dear to my heart. I am on the Pastoral Care Committee at my church, St. John's Episcopal here in Versailles, and we do a lot of work trying to help alleviate some of the poverty here in our community. And you know, poverty is such a multifaceted issue. One thing that hasn't been discussed yet is that there's a significant portion of those people in poverty that are elderly. This is a graying community. We are getting older, not younger. And so therefore there's a lot of individuals on fixed incomes, and you know, they simply can't afford a lot of the expenses that they face every month. You know, it's choosing to pay for medication versus, you know, paying their mortgage or, you know, putting gas in their car. And so I'm not sure that there's a way for the city council to solve that. Perhaps tax abatements, you know, age-based tax abatements. But as far as younger people, there's issues with transportation issues. You know, perhaps we could look at more bike lanes for those who want to bike to work, or some form of public transportation, ticket to ride. I'm glad Mr. Coleman brought up the expungements. I am an attorney, and that is a huge barrier, and it was a huge change that the legislature made this past year. One other idea we could consider is banning the box. For those of you who are unfamiliar with that, the idea is that employers are not allowed to ask about your criminal record on the initial application. It allows those who have criminal records to at least get past that automatic disqualifier. And you know, with expungements, there's a time limit before you can apply for it. And so these people would be covered by the ban the box. So I think that would help. And then Mr. Phil brought up vocational programs. I think that's a really good idea as well, because those are lacking within the schools here.
I'm sorry, that is your time. Thank you. Ms. Dake, how important is integrity for our public officials?
How important is integrity? Well, if you don't have integrity, you really don't have much in the way of credibility, I think, as a public official. The way I always think of it is if I can't get up in the morning and look myself in the mirror and be proud that I'm doing the best I can and doing the right thing, then I feel like I've fallen short. So I think it's critical that we have integrity, that we're honest, that we stand up for what we believe, that if we see something happening that is not correct, that we take a stand, that we're brave, and that we say something. And so I believe that I have integrity, and I certainly see that as a major qualification for a public official.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, how important is integrity for our public officials?
I think it's probably the most important quality. If you don't have integrity, if your citizens don't trust you, then you're not going to be very effective. I mean, we see that on a state and national level with all the different people that are stepping down from positions and things of that based on their behaviors. I think it's critical for your public to be able to trust you, to feel that you're honest, and that you're telling them the truth. You know, it's in being what you see is what you get. So I think that's paramount to being a good public servant, is being able to, that your public knows that you're effective and you're giving them straight and honest answers.
Thank you. Mr. Farrell, how important is integrity for our public officials?
I think integrity is everything for our public officials. You know, if we can't be honest with ourselves, we can't be honest with the community. So, you know, being as open and honest and admitting to our faults, admitting when we screw up, or admitting when we could have done a better job is important. And I'd like to think that most people in the community would want everybody on their council to be open and honest with them about everything that goes on in this community, or things that are discussed that would definitely impact their day-to-day life.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, how important is integrity for our public officials?
Like everyone else has said, it's extremely important. 68 years old, and I've been self-employed, had a business for 38 of those years, maybe 39. And without integrity, you don't get anywhere in business. And it's the same way when you're a public official of any kind. People are going to watch for that integrity. We have people daily in positions, other counties, probably even this county, that they don't have that integrity, or they lose it, and then they get called at what they're doing, and it's obvious they didn't have the integrity to start with. So it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, how important is integrity for our public officials?
Integrity is vitally important. You know, as an attorney, I have an ethical duty. I have a list of ethics I have to follow. Not everyone and not every profession has that, particularly politicians, as our national and state leaders sometimes show us too well. But I think that equally as popular, equally as important is humility. And I think that that's something a lot of our political leaders could use. We are servants of the people. We are here to do a job for them, to make their lives better, not to advance ourselves. And I think too often people lose that when they enter public service. You know, like I said, I worked for the city of New Orleans, and I spent 7 days inside the Superdome helping people, saving people's lives. That's what I did. And I didn't do it because I want an attaboy, or I definitely didn't do it for the paycheck. I did it because it was the right thing to do, and the people needed help.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, how important is integrity for our public officials?
As everyone has said, it is the most important thing. Without integrity, what do we have? I mean, that's when you get up in the morning, as Stake said, you gotta look yourself in the mirror. It has to be there. The people that vote for us, hopefully if we don't have integrity, why should they vote for us? When we have jobs, whether it's our day job or trying to do something for the city, integrity is what it's about. I mean, why? It's just what makes the world go round. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, do you think our downtown space is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
I think our downtown space is more successful than it was a year or 2 years ago. We see, as I said before, with the coffee shop and with the bourbon bar, with the gallery, with the tap room that's coming, I think that's going to make any downtown spaces vacant more attractive to people to come here. The fact that we have more events now. I mean, we've added 4th of July, we've added Fall Festival to our list of events that we have downtown. When people come downtown, that means businesses is going to do better. Just recently, when we had the Twilight Festival, we block off a number of streets. And I went to one of the restaurants and I said, man, you know, I know you don't like to have the street blocked because it affects your business. He said, oh my gosh, block it again, because I was packed out until like 9 o'clock that night. So, I think that the more we can promote our downtown and have events, and And with the more private business that comes downtown, I think it's going to help the infill of any vacant downtown space.
Thank you. Mr. Farrell, do you think our main street and downtown space is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
I do. Growing up here when I was a kid, we didn't go downtown much. There wasn't much to do downtown. There wasn't much to see. I think we've seen in the past 3 to 4 years that it really has come alive again, and there's still a lot of work to do to make it, a fantastic downtown, but it has come a long way, and they're doing great things now. I would like to see some more tourism of our downtown. Our downtown is beautiful. It is, the middle of the heart of our town, and it should be shown off as much as possible. And by having a wonderful website that showcases everything that there is to do downtown, the walkability of it, the restaurants that we have, the new coffee shops and event spaces that are popping up, it would be a great asset to have that in our community and online for people to come and check out. But I also think that with our downtown comes more and more development and bringing in more private businesses and more people who will help generate income for the rest of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, do you think our main street and downtown space is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
Well, I think it's very successful, and I think it's getting better each year. I think there's a lot going on, and I think there's plan for even better. I love what's going on downtown Versaille. Someone mentioned earlier there's a few storefronts and so forth that need business in there. They would be great. But what's going on downtown Versailles right now is super. It's super. And there don't need any changes except maybe add some events, different times. But I love what's going on. I like the loud music when the streets shut down. I like the car shows when they're down there. I like what's going on, and it's a good time, and I think people enjoy it, and I think it's going great. And like I said, I think it would even be better in months and years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, do you think our main street and downtown space is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
I think it is healthy. I think it is successful. A lot of that is due to the foresight and really the risk-taking of the investors who have put their businesses down there, particularly a lot of the new investors. And so they should be applauded for that. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. I'm a past board member of Woodford Forward. They commissioned a study by CDEC, which is an economic development organization from the University of Kentucky. And basically what this survey was is they sent secret shoppers into our community, 11 of them, to walk around, see what people thought of this community, and the reports of the downtown were wonderful. Other than it needed more signage, which evidently Ms. Dake said is on its way. The only thing I would say that needs to be done is we need to better incorporate Big Spring Park, which, sorry, Ms. Dake, I'm sure I beat you to that one. It does need to be more of a community. My opinion is we should use the old police station for the pavilion. What I would do is get rid of what is now the police evidence building, the former pool house, and find a way to integrate the Main Street to Big Spring Park in a visual way so that people can see that it's part of it. Outside of that, I'd also say I'm wholeheartedly against the bypass. If we put in a bypass, what we have and what we know of as our downtown will be gone because people won't come through. So with that, I would say, I love downtown. I live 2 blocks from it. Keep it strong.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, do you think our main street and downtown space is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
Yes, I do think it's healthy and successful, and much more so than it has been in years past. It is going in the right direction. I wish we had a little more parking available. I think when we have events downtown, that is an issue for people. We live on Stout, and there's times we've actually walked downtown rather than have to fight the parking. But I definitely like what's going on, and we're going in the right direction.
Thank you. Ms. Dake, do Do you think our Main Street and downtown space is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
I also live downtown. I live on South Main. I would have walked here tonight, except I would have been all sweaty, so I decided not to. But I love what's happening downtown. It is thanks to the Riddles in particular and their investors, other investors who took a chance on these buildings that were, kind of dilapidated and put a lot of money into them. And to see them being revitalized is just wonderful. As chair of the Downtown Planning Advisory Committee, we have expanded our definition of downtown. So it's not just Main Street, but it does include Big Spring Park. It includes all the way up to where the high school is. It includes Lexington Road as well. We have ideas for maybe potentially working a little bit more on improving the look of Lexington Road as people drive in to welcome people downtown. We have some ideas for street art in addition to the mural that's going up. We have I think over 230 artists who live in Woodford County, and so we want to tap into that wonderful talent to bring some color and interest to downtown. We mentioned the wayfinding signage a little bit ago. We have a small initiative that we're working on to encourage people to buy local, and especially to buy downtown. There is an opportunity, I think, to look at some of the buildings downtown that are underutilized. So where you might have second and third floors that are maybe being used for storage or something like that, perhaps there is a way to encourage the business owners to, look at maybe turning those into housing or into stores. I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Farrell, do you have any specific measures you would endorse and push to try and spur or attract more economic development in Versailles? And if so, what are they?
I think that by having our economic development position in Versailles, push to, if it is a full-time position, maybe bringing on somebody else to help facilitate that, and expedite the process to help talk to businesses who are looking to come here. I know that it is a tough time bringing a business and opening a business up in a town, so having one or two people staffed in Versailles and their sole job is to help bring in, whether it be a big company or a mom and pop that's looking to come into the downtown or in the urban service boundary, would be very beneficial.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, do you have any specific measures you would endorse and push to try and spur or attract more economic development in Versailles? And if so, what are they?
No, I wouldn't have any at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, do you have any specific measures you would endorse and push to try and spur or attract more economic development in Versailles? And if so, what are they?
Well, I've mentioned it already once, that we need a communications person and or marketing person to really get the message of how wonderful Versailles is out to the remainder of the world. We need to kind of centralize that option because it really, the sources of messaging are too diverse. You have a little bit of messaging coming from the chamber, for example. You have some coming from the Tourism Commission. You have some from both Woodford County, City of Versailles, Midway. We need one central repository for information, one central person that the press can go to, that people can go to find information about this community. So that would be the first thing that I would focus on. And then it's been mentioned several other times, but I think the Bridge the Gap program is a wonderful development in this community. It needs to be expanded because that's going to, by increasing the skills and getting rid of some of these barriers to employment, we'll get more of our people working, and that in and of itself would be economic development.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, do you have any specific measures you would endorse and push to try and spur or attract economic development in Versailles? And if so, what are they?
Well, I think John Silver does a great job with EDA in bringing factories to our community. I would like to see, and I'm not sure how we would do it, but I would like to see some kind of push from the city or with the city council if possible, or some way in trying to bring more retail sales or retail businesses here to fill some of our empty stores that we currently have. And I think we would just need to work with John and the city on that.
Thank you. Ms. Dake, do you have any specific measures you would endorse and push to try and spur or attract economic development in Versailles? And if so, what are they?
Well, I certainly want to encourage small business downtown. And I kind of echo Mr. Jones regarding some of the properties that are sitting empty to try to encourage businesses of very small tech firms or whatever retail spaces to bring them into those properties that are blighted, that could be torn down and built into something else, or could be modified some way to bring economic development without expanding our footprint beyond the current urban service boundary, pre-Edgewood urban service boundary. I would be interested if there were industries that we would court industries that would take up a smaller environmental footprint. So, a tech firm, medical equipment firm, but something smaller that might take up 3 to 5 acres of land and have some really fantastic jobs. Maybe the average wage isn't $12 to $14 an hour, but would be $20 to $40 an hour, that range. So I would want to encourage that. And then I guess we've all talked about the education piece and trying to eliminate some of those barriers that some people have in getting jobs. And if we can make it a little bit easier for folks, then we can fill the jobs that have gone wanting.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, do you have any specific measures you would endorse and push to try and spur or attract economic development in Versailles? And if so, what are they?
As a member of the Woodford County Economic Development Authority, first and foremost, I would have to say the leadership of John Soper. I think he has built a strong EDA committee, and I think that has evidenced in the last 2 to 3 years and what we've been able to do. I think the overtures to, as we said before, bridge the gap, where we try to identify what are the barriers that some people face with trying to secure employment here in the county. We need places to put businesses. I think we have had some interest from other businesses to come here, but we haven't had the space to be able to place them. And I'm not talking about large employers. I'm talking about smaller ones and the smaller footprint that Ms. Dake had mentioned. It's just difficult. But yesterday I attended the ribbon cutting ceremony for the Holiday Inn Express. 5 years ago, on the Mayor's Committee for Economic Development and Retention, we explored a hotel, and I had the president of the Kentucky Hotel Association say, never going to happen. Not going to happen for at least 10 years. So it was incredibly gratifying to have the ribbon cutting of that hotel. But we just need to look at potential areas, and if other employers may have some space that they want to sell us in order to get smaller employers here in this area.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, suppose you are elected and it is the end of your term. What do you want to be able to say that you have accomplished that would lead voters to elect you for a second term?
Some of the things that I've mentioned tonight: clean up areas of the city that need to be cleaned up, make people do things that they should be doing and not getting by with. Some of the development we talk about for jobs and like that, that would be great. But we have a great big building sitting on a big sink out there that can't find enough people for a second shift. So I don't know if you bring in more things for employment that you're going to get those people. So at the end of that term, I don't know. I would hope that some of the things that I actually would like to see are, taken care of. We have homes and things like that sitting around the town that owners are not made to maintain. And that's one of my biggest reasons to sitting here today and actually filing for this seat, is to work for the people. Be there for the people and the things that people need. When a neighbor says that this problem's going on, that problem's going on, city council can address it. And so at the end of that, I hope that we address those things and accomplish some things in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, suppose you are elected and it is the end of your term. What do you want to be able to say that you have accomplished and that would lead voters to elect you for a second term?
First, I would love to say that we hired our new communications director. That would be number one. Number two, that we have revitalized Big Spring Park to make it the jewel it should be in our downtown community. And third, I'd love to say that we passed a fairness ordinance. This community should have one. There's 9 other cities in this Commonwealth that have protected the rights of everyone in their communities. We should be the 10th, and I would love to have those three things done in the end of my 2-year term.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, suppose you're elected and it is the end of your term. What do you want to be able to say that you have accomplished that would lead voters to elect you for a second term?
That we have added to the infill that we've all talked about here. I would like to see the controlled growth out 60 that I think we should do. And help fill some of the retail stores that are currently vacant. If we could do that, I would be a happy camper.
Thank you. Ms. Dake, suppose you're elected and it is the end of your term. What do you want to be able to say that you have accomplished that would lead voters to elect you for a second term?
If I'd known that revitalizing Big Spring Park was this easy, it'd be done. I'd love to see Big Spring Park revitalized, of course. I would like to see a beautiful small town that retains its charm and its character and what has made this county famous, really, in the world. I would love to retain that. That would be, so we don't look like some of the other surrounding counties, that we're careful with our growth, that it is sustainable and controlled, and again, just leaving this area as beautiful as we can possibly make it. I would also, and we didn't really talk about the youth of the community that much, but we'd love to leave a legacy for our kids. There are so many kids who are dealing with difficult home situations, maybe struggling with mental illness, and maybe a loss of hope, at a time of life when you should be filled with hope. And I would love to see the city do more to encourage healthy behaviors and skills and talents, and helping kids develop those things to keep them out of trouble, keep them feeling like they can have a piece of the American dream, and that they can be good, productive members of society and hopefully stay in Versailles.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, suppose that you are elected and it is the end of your term. What do you want to be able to say that you have accomplished that would lead voters to elect you to a second term?
Well, I would like to see us finish the present initiatives we have ongoing right now with our police station, our water treatment plant. I would like to see some of these jobs filled. I would like to see a lower poverty rate. Instead of seeing we're hiring signs for our businesses, to be able to bridge the gap, as we've said before, for some people that have obstacles today. I'd like for us to manage our growth. I don't want us to become Nicholasville or Georgetown, but we can have things here, and we should offer our citizens more than they have today, but we can do so in a controlled manner. I would like to see those things: affordable housing, the drug problem, and our workforce development. I would love to see us have an initiative where not only is the city of Versailles, but the city of Midway and the city and Woodford County are working together to try to tackle these problems together, instead of the city of Versailles doing one thing or the Midway doing something else. We're doing it together. And we saw that with the animal ordinance. We started working on an animal ordinance. We took it to the county. They started working one. We drafted one, and ended up all three of us adopted With the exception of a few items, we essentially adopted the same ordinance that can now be enforced collectively.
Thank you. Mr. Farrell, suppose that you're elected and it is the end of your term. What would you like to be able to say that you have accomplished that would lead voters to elect you to a second term?
Not only would I like to say that I've been a part of a council that has engaged the youth more and gotten them more involved in their communities, but I also would like to be able to say that Versailles is no longer a place to come and retire, but a place to come and raise your families and live and work and play. Versailles is a great place to call home, and I would like to improve that tremendously.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, have I already asked you this question?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Now, give my answer again.
What will you do to ensure transparency and increase community involvement in the decisions that affect growth in Versailles and the surrounding county?
Well, it's been mentioned in passing several times before. I know there's some improvements coming to the website. I'm hoping one of those is live streaming. If we can do it for this event right here, then we should be able to do it for the city council meetings. I think it would be nice if they moved the city council meeting back a little bit. They're a little bit early in the day for those people who are just getting out of work at 5 o'clock. It can be kind of hard to get off over to city council meetings. And one of the things that I will pledge to do if elected is to get out in the community and have coffee with a councilman. Our police force has done this on several instances over the past year or so. They did coffee with a cop. People might want to have coffee with their councilman. I don't know that, but I'm willing to buy the coffee and find out. Let people come, bring their ideas, their concerns directly to me, so that they don't have to come to the public forum necessarily of a city council meeting. And of course, my phone number is available. People can email me however they want. I'm happy to talk to them.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, what will you do to ensure transparency and increase community involvement in the decisions that affect growth in Versailles and the surrounding county?
Well, I agree with what Mr. Hall said about the live streaming. I think that's a great idea. Getting out of the community, just posting what the council does on Facebook, on other social media events out there, but definitely just being available to the constituents, to be able to talk to them, let them to be available to them. They need to have access to all of us, and they need to know what's going on, and we need to make sure that it's available for everyone to see.
Thank you. Ms. Dake, what will you do to ensure transparency and increase community involvement in the decisions that affect growth in Versailles and the surrounding county?
Well, I feel like I've kind of made a little bit of a step in that direction. I'm really happy to say that we had first readings on 3 transparency ordinances at the last city council meeting, and presumably we'll pass all of those at our next meeting. And that they involve posting meetings and posting minutes for the main city council, and as well as for the committees, the 6 standing committees that we are involved in. I also would like to see meetings live streamed. I also would like to see except I have a really loud voice, but I would love to see the other council members, all council members, and everybody who is up on the dais to be mic'd, so everybody in the audience can hear them. I think that's critically important. I also would be in favor of, he mentioned coffee with a council person, but periodic listening forums or town halls, if you will, maybe once a quarter, where we can hopefully try to get community involvement and engagement. I think that's critical. I've really tried to do that as a council person, and have worked with well over 50 people in the community on various projects, and I'm really proud of that. So that's what thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, what will you do to ensure transparency and increase community involvement in the decisions that affect growth in Versailles and the surrounding county?
Well, I think many of them have been mentioned. Maybe the live streaming, that's a possibility. Many communities are doing that now. I like the town hall approach. I had thought about doing that where we go into a community. Chief Fugate and I, we held a kind of a picnic for the citizens of Marywood, for people to get familiar with the police and with the city council. We did that a couple of years ago. Sometimes those things are effective, but I think the largest component is getting to where these people are, going in their communities or in their neighborhoods and making ourselves available. I know that, and we've tried in the past to have town hall meetings for different communities, like in the community room of this building, and people just don't come out. So I think going to where they live and just being accessible.
Thank you. Mr. Farrow, what will you do to ensure transparency and increase community involvement in the decisions that affect growth in Versailles and the surrounding county?
I hate to beat a dead horse about the live streaming, but yeah, definitely having all meetings live streamed and especially archived as well, whether that be on a YouTube channel or whether that be on our new website for the city that's coming out. Another thing that I noticed today, on the Versailles website, if you want to get in touch with the city councilman, it has their personal email on there, some do. I think it would be more appropriate to give official city council email addresses to all councilmen. That way they can archive those, and it's very separate from their personal lives. And also the possibility of a newsletter that goes out bi-weekly that we could send out to those who would like to receive it, that what is happening at the city council meetings that day, and then also the minutes from previous meetings as well.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, what will you do to ensure transparency and increase community involvement in the decisions that affect growth in Versailles and the surrounding county?
Well, I'll say this again. I want to be out there in the public. I want to be out among the people. I want to visit with the firefighters, the police, and the sheriff's department. And, as far as emails, I have an email, and I'd be more than willing to use my personal email to communicate with those people. And I know that the firefighters will often have a lot of questions because they ask me a lot of questions as it is. And, just pull the community together in every way possible, but have events, if nothing else, to where those people are there to hear and see what's going on with city council. And like someone else said, sometimes people don't have time to come to a meeting and see what's going on. So yeah, to be hooked up with the people through emails would be a great way, no doubt about it. If I've got an email, I'd work on that for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, you will now have 2 minutes to summarize your position on the future of Versailles and what needs to be accomplished.
I work a lot in this community. I volunteer a lot. I see a lot of poverty. I thoroughly enjoy working with the Mentors of Meals, helping provide food for them. The community dinner. I'm a coordinator for 5 different churches that provide food on Mondays. We've done over 120,000 meals in the last 8 years that we provided. I really would like to see us get more involved in that aspect of our community. To be filled, I want to utilize as much as we can, and I would love to see our retail spaces, the empty ones, filled. But I really want to make sure that our growth is controlled, that we don't become a Scott County or a Jessamine County, but that we do continue to grow, because I do firmly believe that if you're not growing, you're dying.
Thank you. Ms. Dake, you will now have 2 minutes to summarize your position on the future of Versailles and what needs to be accomplished.
I mentioned some of my first-term accomplishments in my opening remark. Some of my future plans include continuing what I've started, working on a vibrant, vital downtown, improving Big Spring and other city parks, and improving the look of the entrances to Versailles, among many others. I am committed to the young people in this community, particularly teens, to find healthy outlets for their energy. I am a tutor for an English language learner, a little girl who's 6 years old, with the kids who come to my church for that program. The energy is boundless. They're wonderful children, and we work with the community, the immigrant community, to help the kids with their English language skills so that they can be better students in school. It really starts very young. I am passionate about infill and rehabbing blighted properties and protecting Versailles and Woodford County's #1 asset, which is its rural character and small town charm. I am absolutely committed to the belief that we are a better city when we engage the entire community. And I mentioned about the town halls and enhancing public participation in the legislative process by posting council meeting materials online prior to meeting. I didn't mention that earlier. I have conducted myself with integrity and have listened to the people of this community and considered their needs very carefully. As an aside, and this didn't come up tonight, but it came up during the forums for magistrates, I have never taken medical, health, dental, or vision benefits offered to city council members, even though I am eligible to do so, nor will I take them. This saves the city
I'm sorry, that is your
approximately
time.
$7,000 a year.
Thank you. Mr. Farrell, you will now have 2 minutes to summarize your position on the future of Versailles and what needs to be accomplished.
Sorry, is it me?
He is last.
Oh, okay. Well, I would just, yeah, sorry. I would like to see Versailles be a place that people are drawn to, marketing our community as a place that is warm and welcome would be very beneficial for the future of Versailles, bringing in new blood into the city that will hopefully make our city grow appropriately by still maintaining the great small town hospitality that we have.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, you will now have 2 minutes to summarize your position on the future of Versailles and what needs to be accomplished.
Well, we've covered a lot of things. Some things that we in the future could accomplish, we've covered all those things tonight. Some things that I would like, being sit in the seat, is things that we don't want in Versailles, like someone, I think Mr. Jones says, not having the growth that 2 other cities he mentioned had. We don't need that in Versailles. One of the things that I would stand strong against is things like Walmarts and things like that. We had a Kmart, but it wasn't such a great store. We all know that. But I love the size of our town, what it is now. Maybe new blood would be okay. Maybe some new people in town, some younger people, having things offered to them that would bring them to town. Yes, but my whole goal sitting on the seat is to work with the other members, listen to the city, listen to what people are asking for, what their hopes are, and working with that. Another thing I'd love to see is the churches of the community pulling together and doing some of the things and the events that other people do. And there's a lot of things to be accomplished by the churches being pulled together like that. So that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, you will now have 2 minutes to summarize your position on the future of Versailles and what needs to be accomplished.
Thank you. First, I want to thank all of my fellow candidates here. We've had a very lively forum tonight. I would be very proud to serve with any of you. I also want to thank the Chamber and the social activism class for putting on this wonderful forum. As a graduate of the Scripps School of Journalism at Ohio University, as a graduate of the Ohio University Political Science Program and the University of New Orleans Master of Arts Political Science Program, I know that if people don't know about something, it's as if it doesn't exist. And right now, we need to do a better job of communicating to the wider world how wonderful this community is. And by bringing a communications person, a dedicated staff person in to handle that, will go a long way to fulfilling that goal. As a citizen, I want our community to be welcoming to new visitors. I want them to feel like they have a good time here, they can enjoy themselves, and so that's why I will put an emphasis on tourism. As an attorney, I want to make sure that every single person in this community feels that their rights are protected regardless of their race, their religion, their gender, and their sexual orientation. And I want them to feel like they have a voice in the decisions of our community. And as a father, I want our parks to be better and safer places, more inviting places for our children to learn and grow. And so that's why I'm running for city council.
Thank you. Now to Mr. Coleman. Sorry about that. Mr. Coleman, you'll now have 2 minutes to summarize your position on the future of Versailles and what needs to be accomplished.
Well, I want to say that I have enjoyed serving on the city council. I love it. It fits me, and it's just like I was made for it. If you've ever had a time in your life where you felt like you were meant to do something, this is something I was meant to do. I love serving. I had a gentleman on Friday night, as I was talking to me, he said, listen, I'm not politically in tune. I'm not going to read the Woodford Sun. I'm not going to come to council meetings and committee meetings. I've got a job. I've got a son. He said, that's why I elected you. And he said, I know that you'll let me know if there's anything that I need to know. And I thought that was a great compliment. But continuing, as we've said numerous times, continuing what we've started, and workforce development, bridging the gap, and working on infill and trying to improve the quality. I love the tourism. Now that with the hotel, there's going to be increased revenue for our tourism commission to do things that we've not been able to do in the past, and that will enhance our downtown in our city. So I want to thank the Chamber. I want to thank the Spark students tonight for participating and making this possible. I want to thank all of my fellow candidates, and I want to wish you the best of luck on November 6th. Thank you.
Before I thank the candidates, there's a couple of things I'd like to tell you. The community activist group has asked me to put on a candidate forum for the school board, and we are going to do that on September the 26th at the Woodford County Middle School. And I'd like to thank Tony Brock, Olivia Ridgway, Elizabeth Becaras in the back, Josie, and I don't know where Rick went. Rick sets everything up for us here, and he's done a great job. And thank John for providing us with the forum to publicize these forums, and my executive assistant over there for taping this. And I have a feeling they're going to hire her to do the city forums. But thank you all for being here. I appreciate it, and thank you for participating.